handout from today that did not get one.
Is this what your email?
Yeah, that's my email. If you didn't get the email.
That's for me, bud.
Get 3. Some people's children.
That's what I handed out, what I gave on the handout. That's one for those who didn't have it. All right, also, for those of you interested, I like to recommend books at times. This particular book is called Kindness by Rabbi Zelig Pliskin. It's a great little book called Changing People's Lives for the Better. Just great little strategies for showing kindness to people. And it's one of those books that when you read it, you just kind of, I'll give you a little example of some of the things he does. These little short chapters. He says, I highly recommended my doctor to others. Not only did he treat me in a way that reflected his sincere caring, he also prayed for me. Following treatment, he wrote down the relevant facts so he would remember to include me in his prayers. You won't always be able to solve everyone's problems. You can't always figure out the best solution. Your knowledge and resources might not enable you to meet all this person's needs, but you can always pray. When you pray for the welfare of another person, you are expressing your awareness that true power belongs to the one above. Your praying for another person is an expression of your feelings of concern and compassion. So it's just things like this. It's a great little book on showing kindness. Zelig Pliskin. He writes a number of books on kindness and speech, and I'll leave it up here for those of you who'd like to look at it. It's a great little read on just strategies to show kindness. And I have found, this is my observation, take it for what it's worth, but I think that whenever we show kindness to people, we live in such an unkind world that whenever people show kindness, it just sticks out. People are surprised by your kindness because they're not used to it. So if we can show kindness to somebody, it's one of those things that when that happens, people are just kind of going, wow, okay, thank you for being kind. Because I'm just not used to it. So anyway, Zelig Pliskin, book called Kindness, Changing People's Lives for the Better. All right, now we're going to turn our attention to the apostolic text that we read earlier here. Matthew chapter 22, verses 15 through 22. I want us to think about the big picture of what God is doing. We have in the Hebrew Scriptures the creation of Elohim. And these Elohim surround the throne of God. We know that there are thousands of them. Myriads, we're told in Greek. Plethora. Myriads. Okay? And we know that these Elohim, that a certain portion of them decide to rebel against God. And they are cast to this earth. And these ones that were now Elohim, having been cast to this earth, are referred to as demons. And the so-called leader of this rebellion is one whose name is Satan. It's not a name, it's actually a title, meaning the adversary. And we find this adversary at work in the last week of Yeshua's existence on this earth. Can you give me some examples of where we find in the Gospels evidence that Satan is at work to bring about the destruction of Yeshua? Specific where he's mentioned, yes.
Right, it struck me a long time ago when I read it, but right after Christ rejects the third temptation,
yes,
the very next sentence says, and Satan went away until an opportune time.
Yes. Yes, that's the temptation in the wilderness.
The big three.
Yeah. Very good, yes.
When he
he tempted Judas to,
Yes, yeah. Use your big girl words. Okay.
The crowd picked up rocks to stone him.
Hold on.
Sorry.
See.
betray him.
Yes, it says, it's interesting, one of the gospel accounts, only one of them, says that Satan entered Judas, who was to betray him. It's interesting. Okay, you had one.
He picked up the rocks to stone him.
Okay, they pick up rocks to stone him. Okay, yeah, that's part of it. I'm specifically looking for places where, clear on the page, it tells us that Satan is in the picture. Yes.
I think part of it was the Pharisees wanted to find ways that they could do him in.
Sure. Oh, definitely. I'm not agreed. But I'm specifically asking, where do we see Satan in the picture? I'll give you another example.
Well, Peter.
Exactly. That's what I was going to get to. Peter. He turns to Peter during that last week and he says, "Satan, get thee behind me." Peter says, no, you really shouldn't go and suffer. You shouldn't die. That's not a good policy. And he says, "Satan, get thee behind me." Right? He's not saying that Peter's Satan. He's saying, Peter, the idea that you're putting forth, that's coming from the evil one. That's coming from Satan. Okay? So yeah, these are little snippets that we get that the evil one is at work in this process. Yeshua well aware of that.
Well, he also brings up that Satan wanted to sift Peter.
Yes. He says to Peter, Satan has desired to sift you as wheat. But I have prayed for you, and I've argued in the past that that's Yeshua indicating that he was at a divine council meeting where Peter was discussed like we see happening in Job chapter 1, where they're discussing, the divine council is discussing Job. And Job's name comes up, and can I mess with Job? Well, Peter's name came up in a divine council meeting. And Yeshua is obviously there. He says, Peter, Satan desired to sift you, but I have prayed for you. So this ongoing battle with the evil one is present, yes.
In the divine council, was the Muslim God Allah there?
No.
I didn't think so.
But demonic forces that moved the world leaders and that are behind these gods are there.
Thank you.
Let's go back to what we find in Matthew. He says to them, they say to him, "Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar?" Now, remember what's happening. We're getting ready to come up to Passover. This last week of Yeshua's life. And Rome is concerned about Passover because Passover celebrates the throwing off of oppression. So let me get this straight, you guys. Rome's thinking, you guys are celebrating the throwing off of oppression of Egypt. Well, we, Rome, are oppressing you. So maybe this is not, maybe having the people that you've subjected celebrate a previous throw off of oppression. Rome is worried, concerned. So what do? They send more people, they send more guards and more people down to make sure that any rebellion can be quashed should it arise. So the Pharisees, they wanted to test him. Here's the test. If Yeshua says, "Do not pay taxes to Caesar," then he's leading a rebellion against Rome. That is tantamount to rebellion. Do not pay taxes to Rome. Withhold your taxes. That's a rebellion. If he says, "No, go ahead and pay Rome your taxes," but people are going to say to him, "This guy is in favor of what Rome's doing. He's in favor of the oppression. He's a collaborator. We're not listening to a collaborator anymore." So either way he goes, they figure they've got him in a bind. He says to them, "Well, show me the coin." And then he says to them, "Whose image is on the coin?" And they say, "Caesar's," and rightfully so. He then says, "Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's." That stuff's gonna fade away. It's not gonna last. It has his image on it, but he's drawing us back in our minds to Genesis 1:26. We, the people of God, are made in his image. He says, "Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, but render to God the things that are God's." Those of us who are created by him are created in his image. Therefore, give to God the things that are God's, which is yourself, you. Now, this is different in our mindset than the ancient Near East. In the ancient Near Eastern mindset, you would set up a image of the emperor or the Caesar as a way of saying that the emperor rules in that area. This is why when our soldiers went to Iraq and Afghanistan, they couldn't understand why there were pictures, now they're pictures, but also statues of all of these leaders. Why do they put pictures all over the place? Why do they put their statue all over the place? So what do? We tear down the pictures and we topple these statues of these guys as a way of saying, you don't rule here anymore. Your authority is not here anymore. He says, I'm putting my image on humanity. Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Spread my image. For wherever my image exists, there my authority and dominion exists. However, what happens? Sin comes into the picture. Sin destroys humanity. And in fact, it's the evil one who wants to destroy humanity. He wants to get rid of the dominion of humanity, this image. So what does he do? He tempts man. Satan uses this serpent, and he tempts man, and man rebels against God just as the evil ones have done, and now they are going to die just like the evil ones. The question becomes, will God redeem the evil ones, and will he redeem humanity? And he makes the decision. He makes the decision to redeem humanity. He makes Adam the representative of humanity. Adam, will you be obedient to me? Will you observe what I tell you to do? Up to a point, Adam will, but he does rebel. So, the point of the resurrection, so to speak, why does Jesus come here? He comes here as the new representative of humanity in his humanness, and he represents you and I. Just as in Adam all die, he now comes, and by going through death and coming out the other side, he is able to bring us life again, so that the image that was destroyed can be again resurrected and again his dominion established. My point is this, that the reason he comes and the reason that he dies and goes through the whole process of death and then resurrection is so that he can raise up us to be image bearers once again and spread his dominion. It has from the beginning, and it still is today, all about his dominion. He represents us in death. He comes to this earth. He's obedient. He dies. He's resurrected. We then, because of his work on our behalf, because we are in him, we too can be resurrected. Just as we were in Adam, we are in Messiah. And because we are in Messiah, we can have resurrection.
I was thinking too, yeah, and along with that, evil was conquered.
Yes.
Because it didn't work for evil. So therefore, his righteousness, and we have in him, will prevail.
Right, absolutely. But my point is this, and you're absolutely right, is that this has always been about God having sovereign rule over the universe. When the evil ones were sent to this earth, they were in rebellion. They were here by themselves. For how long, we don't know. Doesn't matter. He puts mankind here. Mankind is then set up as the image bearers. You are my image bearers. You will be the ones who will establish my rule. Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth so that the whole earth is full of my dominion. Yeah.
Where do you get that they were sent before man was created?
Well, I put it this way: we're never told where we get the cherubim. We're never told where we get the the snake, the serpent. And what's interesting is when we are told about it in the prophets, it does seem to indicate they were here, that they were cast down before. That's what we get with Genesis 6. Depending on how you read Genesis 6, so that these Nephilim are already, these fallen ones are already here. That seems to be the indication from the prophets. And you also get that.
Doesn't it say that you walked in the garden until iniquity was found in you?
Yes, and there's also, but it says in this one that you were anointed cherub before the world, I mean before the creation. So there seems to be indications in the prophets that they existed prior to humanity, to him putting humanity here on this earth. Yes.
That's kind of my understanding too, is that when we get the creation account, the earth is without form and void. It's got these yucky people on it. And he makes the earth and then he creates the
Right. At the time, the earth is not inhabitable. The earth is not inhabitable for humanity. So he makes the earth inhabitable for humanity.
It wasn't functional.
Wasn't functional for humanity. Yes.
Genesis 1:1. It speaks of the earth was void and darkness covered the earth. Darkness is also wickedness.
Right.
Yeah, and so you see these kind of things that there's got to be, he makes this place inhabitable for us.
Yes.
So my point is, what I'm trying to say though is this, that when we think about what God is doing, the work that God is doing, we have, and I'm putting this out there as a Christianity at large, not any one group. I'm just saying Christianity at large. The way we've thought about what God is doing, we've made it very about us. We've made it, well, this is about because God loves us. And this is, so he came so that you could have all this. And what I'm saying is, rather than it being anthropocentric, it needs to be Christocentric. Because, as I made the point, Paul keeps saying, you are in Messiah. You are in him. Everything is about being in him. We live and have our being because we are in him. He is in Israel. So Israel is here. He is in Israel and we are in him. And he comes, in a sense, to constitute the new Israel, so to speak, the spiritual Israel. This is why he picks 12 disciples. We have 12 tribes, 12 disciples. And all the way through, Yeshua is saying, I'm the temple. I have the 12 tribes following me. This is Israel. This is what Israel was supposed to be. Israel is the physical mechanism for the coming Messiah. And the spiritual mechanism as well. It's both. They're not the end all, but they are the mechanism that he will use. I'm going to use this nation, the people, to bring the Torah and to bring the Mashiach. I will use these people. Yes?
So God established dominion and he overcome and he conquered. So where does that put evil?
Evil will eventually be vanquished.
Okay.
And I'll tell you how we know this. Psalm 82 is incredible. Go read Psalm 82. Psalm 82. This is an important text. It says this. Elohim, I'm reading it. Elohim Nitzah, he stands in the council of the El. He is seated in the council of the El, and standing in the council of the El. He is El Elyon, God Most High. He is above all. Now look what happens. He judges among the Elohim. He says, how long will you judge unjustly and show partiality to the wicked? Defend the poor and fatherless. Do justice to the afflicted and needy. Deliver the poor and needy. Free them from the hand of the wicked. Look at verse 6. I said, you are Elohim, and you are children of the Most High. But you shall die like men and fall like one of the princes. Arise, God, judge the earth, for you shall inherit all nations. In other words, he's saying, look, there will come a time where all these demonic forces and Satan will be vanquished, to where they have no influence upon the world again. They will be judged, so that they cannot tempt mankind again to rebel against God.
The final battle.
Yeah, and this is kind of forecast here in this psalm. Yes.
So the fact that we still have our free will to choose.
Yes.
So there won't be any evil to choose. It'll just.
We'll be able to choose.
Okay.
If there's no evil options, you can't choose to do evil. Evil won't even be an option.
But don't we have a sinful nature?
That's the point of being a Messiah, is that the nature is changed. The nature is changed. Because you are now, instead of being in Adam, you are in Messiah. We are in the process of becoming what we will be. We are not yet there. But we can begin the process. And he has begun the process and the work in us. He's begun the work in us. But the presence of sin still exists in this world. Now, this goes back to the Exodus text for just a moment. This Exodus text, to tell you that we're dealing with a battle that he is also waging. He is waging it on two fronts. He wages this battle using you and I. He uses us in this conflict. And Paul tells us this as much. He says, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against spiritual wickedness in high places." Okay? So that's one thing. Then we know that he also uses an angelic army to also defend his people that we can't see. So that goes to the end of our Exodus text where he says, there was a cloud that filled the temple, representing the presence of God, and there was a cloud that followed the tabernacle, or that hovered over the tabernacle. In the daytime you would see a cloud, at night you would see a pillar of fire, which is the presence of God's chariot. It's his chariot throne. We know this because the Psalms say he's seated above the cherubim. Okay, the cherubim, the Ark of the Covenant, is his footstool. All you get to have with you on earth that you see is the footstool. I'm seated above that, enthroned above that, in a chariot that rides the clouds. And I will protect my people. I will go before them to protect them. So he uses us to defeat the enemy, and he uses this angelic army he has to also defeat the enemy. Hold on one second. We'll run right here, and then we'll get a question. Okay.
Brent?
Yeah, go ahead. Hold on. Wait. One right here first. Go ahead.
Okay. In the redemption process, the Ezekiel 36 has always been used to talk about the new heart and the new spirit, and I've heard people talking about that doesn't apply yet. That section of prophecy doesn't apply yet. That applies to the future.
I think it's now and not yet. I think it's now and not yet. In other words, I think that for those who submit to God, he writes the Torah upon their heart. To those who don't submit, one day they will. He makes this point that there's coming a day where every knee will bow and every tongue will confess. They may not do it now. In fact, I'll say it this way. There are many of my fellow believers. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. They say they're believers in Christ. And they literally mock the Torah. They mock it. They don't believe that the God on this side is the same as Yeshua. Although the God on this side sent this one. Hello? And there's not two different gods and two different peoples, and there's not all this bifurcation and division. But in fact, I had an individual this week say to me, he says, we're going back and forth in the text. He says, so you're a Torah, you think that you keep Torah, do you? I said, look, I'm a pursuant of God's commandments. Yeah, I realize we don't have a temple, we don't have a priesthood, we don't have sacrifices. I understand that. And even with all that, or without all that, I still am not obedient like I would like to be. It's a progress. It's a process, So he says to me, so do you go out and stone prostitutes? Because that's what the Torah says. You should go out and stone prostitutes. You need to go out and because that's what the Torah says. I wrote him back and said, well, if you actually look, it says that you have to have witnesses that actually see the act. You have to have those witnesses cross-examined by judges, and those judges have to then make the decision. I said, it's not for me to take up vigilante justice and start going out and stoning people who I think might be guilty. Even if I think they might be guilty, I can't just decide, you know what? I see some woman walking on the street, I think she might be a prostitute. Well, you know what? No. That's not Torah. Okay? So, I mean, there's a process. In fact, there's a whole chapter in the book Restoration that shows how people mock the Torah and say, well, okay, I saw my neighbor doing this, so should I stone him? I saw my neighbor doing this, so should I stone? It's like, okay, they take all these capital punishment texts and say, okay, let's do this. Let's start, but they take it out of context. Judges have to be involved. Witnesses have to be involved. Cross-examination has to be involved. It's not just vigilante justice. That's not what the Torah is asking for.
But
Yes.
also Torah has to be followed. Torah has to be the center of everything. If people argue, are you gonna, stone someone? We're not running. Israel isn't under Torah.
I agree. I know, and I made that point as well. Yeah.
People don't like to be reminded of what they're responsible for. Plain and simple.
I agree.
So whether it's a religious leader, whether it is people that aren't believers, they'll pick and choose kind of little snippets out of the scripture to try to justify what they want to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. And this is the whole point. The whole point is this: if the kingdom of God is going to be what it's supposed to be, then the rules of the kingdom are: here's how we work with each other, and this is how we work together to advance the kingdom. You see, you really can't advance the kingdom and this is the whole point of the two great commandments: serve the Lord your God, we say love, serve the Lord your God with all your heart. Okay, so you have to be fully devoted to Him. No other gods can you worship or serve. And love your neighbor, serve your neighbor as yourself. Well, so let's take the 10. I'm not serving my neighbor if I go out and murder him. Somehow that just doesn't seem to be serving him. Or stealing from him. Or coveting his things to where I want to steal. Or taking off his wife.
Or gossiping about him.
Yeah, I mean, all these, even gossip. So all these things are not community kingdom building. So he says there are things not to do, and there are things to do. If this happens, do this, because this will advance the kingdom. If you don't do, and he's always talking about, Yeshua is always talking about kingdom. Remember what we said? Yeshua isn't going around saying, hey look, it's all about you.